Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Today, Maria and I are going to be talking about the importance of having a place or space, a venue, somewhere that is named so that you can gather people together.
I really see this as, we talked about this idea of the gathering place. And the gathering can be a lot of different places. And so, for some of us, we will be able to create that gathering place in our home. For some, we can create it outside. I have a beautiful quote somewhere about, that every woman needs a space of her own, even if it's outside of the house. And so it is this idea that with our kids, when we want to come together to create this togetherness, there's a lot of different ideas that we can come up with, that we can share from our experience, that were really pivotal for our kids to be open and for us to have incredibly deep family conversations.
Yeah, it's taking from, Virginia Woolf's A Room of Her Own, and how important that was for me. And I remember telling my now husband that I was reading that book at the time in college of the importance of having a room of her own, how I always wanted that as a woman, as a mom, and how it's like that place of our own, that idea can expand to the family as well. Where's that place in your home that is where the family gathers, where you have your family meetings, where, is it around the kitchen table? And it's just, resources would be really good to have, to create that gathering space of your dreams. But even when resources are small, are tight, you can create that. And that's what I think Maria and I are saying. It's just this notion to remind you that it is important to name a place and a space so that people have that safe place, your children, have a safe space to go to you.
And as I'm thinking about this idea, I'm really looking back at my children's whole trajectory of childhood into the teen years. And it changed over the years as well. And our house was very small when our children were little. We did not have television. So, the living room was a gathering place. It was the place where we all fit. And the kitchen table was also a gathering place. And we've done previous podcasts about the importance of setting up your home in a welcoming way where children have their different activity zones. And we've talked about the importance of the family dinner. So, this is kind of going beyond that. But all of these places can be gathering spots. But I think what we're trying to get away from is this idea of, just the family plunking down in front of a television. And, but what we want to do is really create that space for the conversations to unfold, for the curriculum to be able to be taken to different levels. And so that can look different for every family. And so I think if we just share a couple of our favorites, I think this will kind of unfold and hopefully get our listeners thinking about, well, how does their family gather and where do they do that?
And it's doing this so with intention, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. And so when this topic came to me, because it's always been a dream of mine to have that house with the basement or the attic where your kids would come over, the teenagers would come over, and they would do their thing, their safe place. And the situation, it saddens me that we really have not been able to create that in our home. We live in a small home in Santa Cruz, and it's really expensive to buy a bigger home here. That being said, as I was feeling sad about the situation, how I never provided that for my children, I think about what my children do have. And so what do they have? Well, we have their cousins who have a kind of a weekend home up on near the beach, up in the Bay Area, and that has provided a space for the cousins to come together. So that's the place where they meet their cousins, they have their grandparents, their aunts and their uncles, that come together there. So I'm like, okay, they have that spot which is kind of their designated cousin spot. Another place I thought of is that we have created with college, but we've done a few things, but one thing with college friends is an annual camp out that we have been doing for years and years and years. And we were actually inspired by doing that from this other group that my husband has been going to since he was in high school. And this group has been doing campouts at Comanche Reservoir in California for over 40 years. And so, and it's the thing where most of the kids, there's 3 generations now, 3 generations of kids. The oldest of that 3rd generation is 27. The youngest is 3. Okay, so a lot of age groups there. But the thing about that, like the 3rd generation children, they don't miss that at all because it is so important. You can bribe them with whatever you want, but they will always go to Comanche because it is this time where we just let everything go and we just have a great time, water skiing, wakeboarding, et cetera, et cetera. So those 2 places, I feel like, okay, I never gave my kids the basement, but they have, their cousin's place up in Point Reyes, and then they have the annual camping spot. So are there any places like that you can create for your family, so that you can create memories? Because kind of, we're talking about family school is where shared experiences create the best memories. And that's what I feel like we have done with our kids with those couple places.
And, it's really this idea, you talk about space and place, I think of your quote about space and grace, but also we have space and place. And sometimes it's an actual physical place, and sometimes it's creating that space for them. And I'm also thinking about your home and your passions and, the kitchen and the dining room table. That has always seemed to me a place where your family gathers because you all come together to cook, to do different activities around the kitchen, and then your dining room table is this place that you gather. And you also have that beautiful outdoor area. And so, it's funny that you don't have that basement, but in California, you don't really need that because you've got your beautiful outdoor yard. And I think about growing up, we had outside. It was definitely outside. Our house was, not the place. I mean, we gathered at the dining room table, but we gathered in the backyard or we gathered on the front lawn. And those were the places. We also gathered at my grandparents. And so, your family now, you have the cousins gathering. And so I love this idea of even looking at it intergenerationally, how important that is in your Comanche trips. Those are incredible that this has been going on for, you said, over 40 years. That's amazing. So, but I'm thinking back also in smaller increments of space. So when our kids were growing up, the living room was the place we gathered, definitely the dining room table, but outdoors was where we gathered. And one of our favorite places was we had a fire pit. And literally it was just some rocks. We dug out a little spot in the lawn, put some rocks around it. Somebody had cut down a redwood tree, and so we gathered the logs. And so we placed the logs around the fire pit. And that fire pit became the location for sing-alongs, for conversations, for just after-dinner special gatherings. And so, I think of that, and we would, my husband and I are not great musicians, but we had lots of friends that were musicians. And so we created the space, and they would come. And so that brought music into our family's lives in ways that it would not have otherwise. And so, thinking about how do you bring people together as well. We also had, we were gifted a hot tub. This was an interesting one. We just put it out to the universe. We did not purchase this, and somebody gifted it to us. So don't limit your imagination. And that hot tub, from the time the kids were little all the way through the teen years, was an incredible place for us to gather as a family and soak and look up at the stars. And the conversations were amazing.
I've heard that many times before. The hot tub is a great place for teenagers to talk. And I love that you brought up the fire pit. Those are 2 fabulous ideas to bring conversation together, right? And it reminds me of a story. My friend going to my friend's house for the first time, and she had a fire pit in the front yard. And for my house where I grew up, that was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting or different, and everything. And she would just say that her dad would do that every Friday night. He would put a steak on the grill. And I just thought that was so special.
Yeah, fire pit. I think there's something about fire too. When we look at the elements, so, earth, water, fire, air, And so a pond can also be a gathering place. And some people, some families might be, it might be a creek where they gather and fish or play along the banks of the creek. We would take our children to different places in the Santa Cruz area that had those shorelines. The beach, obviously, is a wonderful place to bring people together, and you can have a fire on many beaches and gather people. I did want to mention another one with teenagers, especially the car. We don't always think of the car as a gathering place, but those long car rides, and for our family, that was a real high priority. We were firm believers in long, boring car trips, and I always said that, and we've said this in previous podcasts, but long trips are for staring out the window and being bored. And yet the conversations that would come up as well were always amazing. And especially in the teen years, I would find that, I'm just going to say this for teenagers, but a lot of times that face-to-face conversation might be uncomfortable, but when you're both facing in a forward direction and you're driving, after an hour or two of silence, sometimes the conversations just bubble forth, or those long walks on the beach, that side by side instead of face to face is really important.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about is just being intentional to create conversation, being intentional, right, to take the time and to make the space. And, these annual campouts, it's a lot of work, that we're going on. It's, to start a fire, it's a lot of work, but what awesome work it is when you're putting it towards your family. You are building, you're cultivating a strong family culture. And that's really what this podcast is all about. And what we are, in this third season, we're really trying to give you strategies of how you can bring in family schooling, and really where you can learn skill, and where, for your children, character is built. Because when they hear the stories of your experiences, when they hear the story of other generations' experiences, that creates rich memories.
I was reading something recently about how much has been lost with just, the individual family growing up away from the extended family. And when we come together in these ways with extended family, the values, the stories are passed down from generation to generation. And, your family is creating that with Comanche and also with your family gatherings. And our family, extended family, has always been huge. And there's a family picnic that we go to in Sonoma every year. And, the space is there, the aunts put it together, and everybody comes. And so, we're inviting you to deepen your thoughts about how do you create these. And, I was visiting a friend in Portland one time, and she had this beautiful big house, and the entire attic was just the kid zone. And they had tons of board games and just all of this lovely space and little dormer windows with reading nooks and bookshelves. And it was so welcoming. And in that climate where it's raining a lot, a place like that is wonderful, but we don't all have these beautiful, huge homes where we can do that. But I love that. And it was so inspiring. And in a small house, you can create that nook that is that kind of area. And so these are just ideas, and every family is going to have a different idea about the ways in which they want to come together. But it's just so important, like you said, to be thinking about these things. And so I'm thinking about also we've talked about rites of passage, but when we mark the year in different ways, then we have these gatherings around that. And so whether it's a 4th of July gathering that becomes ingrained in your family culture, or a solstice gathering, or your holiday gatherings, or what do you do for birthdays? And so you can create all of these special things, and those are gatherings of their own.
Mm-hmm. And marks the passing of time, makes it special, everything, and creates the memories that they're able to come back to. And that's the beauty. That's
right. And when
it's such a simple thought, such a simple thought, but it takes energy, and it takes work. It takes effort.
Right. And when your children are very small, you as the adults are going to be the ones that are coming up with these things. But as your children grow, they're going to give you a lot of ideas as well. And so inviting the children into this conversation of how do we want to celebrate this, whether it's a rite of passage or a birthday or a holiday, how do we want to, as a family, come together? Where are areas? And, a lot of children create their own areas. They'll make forts, or they'll make tree houses, or, they want to have these places that are just their own. And then as adults, we need to respect that as well and be invited, wait to be invited into the treehouse or into the fairy houses or whatever it is that the children have created. But I think that it's important to do that because it is easy to just, give in to the exhaustion of the day and, turn on an audio tape or the television. But we're asking you to really take the time to think about how to make the time special. I mean, you've got this one shot at this, creating this family culture. And as you said, these 18 years or 18 summers that we have together. And how do we want to make that something that they will cherish and that they'll have all of these incredible memories and then want to hopefully pass on to their own families.
Yeah. I love that. When I think about my family, like what are they going to carry on with them? Like what are those things they're going to remember? And they're going to remember our Comanche for sure. But another thing that we've done is annual river rafting trips, and so they'll know that was important to us because for our family, outdoor adventure is a piece of who we are.
Yeah. So we hope we've inspired you with some ideas today. There's so many more. And so we'd love for you to share your ideas. You can add them on the website. And we look forward to continuing this discussion.
Yep. So have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeetfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.